Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Chang here with you. It is October in Central New York, which means Syracuse basketball season is about to get underway. Here to join us to preview the 2025-26 team is our great friend from Syracuse.com, Mike Waters. Mike, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Wes. How are you?
Oh, Mike, I'm doing great now that I'm talking to you. I started on this one. Obviously, historically bad season for Syracuse last year, coming in at 14-19. There's a lot riding on the season, but is it truly an NCAA tournament or bust for Adrian Autry to keep his job this year?
I'm not a big fan of the or bust syndrome, where you're like requiring coaches or players to achieve a certain bar because you're not taking in any possible mitigating factors. So I'm not a big fan of that. And even taking away mitigating factors, let's just say they go 20-11 in the regular season, do fairly well in the ACC. But if the ACC isn't a whole lot better than it's been the past few years, it's as a conference, it's not able to lift you, over and into the tournament field. So that, what if you win 20 games and don't make the tournament? Now, I know some Syracuse fans are going to draw that line in the sand and say, no, that's 3 years without a tournament experience. And we're tired of the Adrian Autry experiment. But I don't know if in fact, I'm sure I'm not in that camp. I would say, well, wait a second, they showed significant improvement here. What's out there that you can guarantee me that could be better as they move along? And, what if, after a 20-win season or something like that, okay, you're going to lose a few guys, but, you start to get some continuity. A Nathan George has more, has eligibility left. Nate Kings has eligibility left. Akira Suare, same thing. The incoming freshmen, like Sadiq White, Kyan Anthony, Luke Fennell, Aaron Womack. Well, wait a second. Why wouldn't I let that coach and that coaching staff continue to work on these guys? So no, I don't think it necessarily has to be NCAA tournament or bust. But I tell you what, I know the goal of both the coaching staff and the players on this team is to get back to the tournament. They're well aware that it's been a long time. 4 years by Syracuse standards is an eternity not to be in the tournament. And even like an old beat writer who covers the team wouldn't mind going back and adhering to the policy of NCAA cups only on the sidelines.
So, Mike, you touched on it. There's a big roster overhaul in the offseason. You just mentioned some of the players coming in, whether it's the freshmen or whether it's the transfers. It seems like to me that there is going to be an improved product on the floor this year compared to last year, because there was part of it's more money available, and part of it's they had a general manager and a year to recruit and understand the portal better. So I look at the roster. I think it's an improved roster. Do you feel the same?
I do. I agree with you, Wes. I think it's a vastly improved roster. I think the addition a year ago of Alex Klein helped them prepare to go into the portal this year, not only with more money, as you mentioned, but also more of a plan ahead of time, because you had somebody in a dedicated position whose job it was while the season was going along last year, not to worry about scouting reports and the next game and practicing and stuff, but planning for the portal and what kind of roster they did want to build. And, you compare it to the year before, and not to cast any aspersions on any of the guys they brought in through the portal. They were all great kids and a couple good ball players in there, but they didn't seem to all fit. It was like, if you want to play aggressively and man-to-man defense and get up, why are you bringing in Eddie Lampkin? If you want to, add to your athleticism and versatility, Jair Davis doesn't really help you there. He can help you in certain ways, but he doesn't help you there. So I think if you look at the portal additions this year, like, oh, there seems to be a real plan at foot here. And I think the big thing was they wanted to get more athletic. They knew they had to get more athletic at every position if they wanted to play the way Red Autry has talked about playing for the last 2 years ever since he took over. He wanted to be upbeat, up-tempo, aggressive, get after you on defense. And I think they've added guys at a lot of positions to help them do so, like Nate Kings, William Kyle, Abraham Soare, guys like that.
So I guess the biggest question for you now is, Mike, I get a prediction from you every year. And again, you've always been, I think you're almost always spot on. So
Except last year, I was way off last year. Let's be honest with the people.
I don't think so. You said they have to really have a perfect non-conference schedule to really get a sniff at the NCAA tournament. They didn't. So I think it played out exactly how you said it would. But let me ask this question a better way. That's maybe a little bit more understanding of all the variables. As the roster looks right,
the student out here, folks. I'm going to get one right. Wes is going to lob one up for me.
How about this? Does this roster, as it's constructed, look like an NCAA tournament team to you? Not will they make it, but does it look like a properly constructed NCAA tournament team? I think that's the best way of asking it.
It does. I love the addition of Nathan George at the point. You're bringing in a guy who's had 2 years at the ACC level. So he's not making a jump from a mid-major up. And listen, the mid-major to major jumps happen, and they can work. A guy doesn't get heavily recruited coming out of high school. He has a couple years of college ball. Either improves his game or maybe he grows a couple inches, and all of a sudden he's a major guy, right? So that can work, but I don't have to guess if it's going to work for Nathan George, because he's just going from Georgia Tech to Syracuse. And a guy who led the ACC in assists last year, he can play. We've seen he can play at this level. You bring back a JJ Starling. You're hoping he's healthy. Last year he missed those 7 games early in the year. And those 7 games, they hurt because I think Syracuse went 2-5 without JJ. A healthy Donnie Freeman. We're not even talking about some of the additions, the portal guys, but just JJ and Donnie. I mean, these were your 2 best players last year, your 2 leading scorers, and they played 7 games together. That's, there's not too many teams in the country that are going to live up to expectations if their 2 best players never play with each other. It's like 7 games. It was the first 6 games of the season. And then when JJ came back from his injury, they played 1 game together at Florida State. And that was Donnie's last game of the year. Donnie could be on the verge of a great season. We'll see. I just keep thinking back to the last 7 games he played in, last 6 or 7 last year. Remember, he's a freshman. And even in his 14 games, he averaged like 13.5 points and 8 rebounds a game, which were great numbers, by the way, for a freshman, first 14 games. But his last 7 games, he went 9 of 18 from 3-point range. I think the kid was starting to figure a few things out. He was figuring out his game. 9 of 18 over a 7-game stretch for a 6'10" forward. So I like him. I've heard great things, really encouraging stuff about Nate Kings, the kid from Oregon State, that he's not just a shooter. And listen,
but he's a good shooter.
Yeah. He's a good shooter. Yeah. Oh yeah. He only made like 44% of his 3-pointers last year, and that was on more than 100 attempts. So, but the Oregon State coaches talked about him bringing him in 2 years ago and thought that he was going to be their best on-ball defender. And then he hurt a knee and he had to sit out a year. And last year was sort of like his get back year, his get well. And so, man, if he's not just like a 3-point sniper, if he's a 2-way guy, but that adds to that whole team dynamic that we've been talking about that Red Autry wants.
So, Mike, I did want to move on from the season preview, and I want to get you out of here on this one. Syracuse great. Lawrence Moten passing away last week. Sad news all around. He's someone who came on this very podcast. We loved having him on. You got to know him very well over time. So do you have a favorite story of yours about him to share?
Oh, man. I got a million Lawrence Moten stories.
Yeah.
It's like, how much time do you have?
Yeah.
Picking out one is tough. I guess one that's I've told before that I like is the story of his first start as a freshman. Now, remember, he came in as a real unheralded recruit in a 6-player recruiting class, and I think he was like the 5th rated guy in the class. So, people were kind of overlooking him, and then he played really well his first 2 games at the Dome against Cornell, and I think Eastern Kentucky or somebody like that, and double figures each game, but about 17, 18 minutes each game coming off the bench. And then Syracuse has to go to Atlanta, where they're going to play a really good Florida State team. This is a Florida State team with Doug Edwards, Bob Sura, future NBA guy, Sam Cassell, another future NBA guard, and this Heisman Trophy winning quarterback named
Charlie Ward.
He's on the team.
Yeah.
So this is a good Florida State team in Syracuse. Yeah. This is still the year after Billy Owens had left. So we still, expectations aren't real high. We don't know what kind of team this is going to be. Adrian Autry has a sore ankle, turned ankle, and he's going to play in the game, but Boeheim decides to start Lawrence. Lawrence didn't expect it, didn't really realize it until before the game, he saw his name up on the chalkboard.
He calls his mom.
Well, that's the story. This is 1991. Nobody has cell phones, and he desperately wants to let his mom know that he's starting. So he has to leave the locker room. This is within about an hour, 30 minutes before tip-off, and he's roaming the hallways, the corridors of the old Omni. I don't know if you ever were at the Omni in Atlanta, but he's looking for a payphone. Kids, ask your parents. Payphone.
The thing with the quarter,
I'll
where Superman changed.
I'm sure he made a collect call, right? Collect call his mom. But he calls his mom and says, "Mom, I'm starting." And she's like, "Oh, baby, that's great. Don't ever let him take it back."
He never did.
He didn't.
Yeah.
That was it. That was his first start. And he never relinquished that starting role. And I think he scored about 24 points that night against Florida State and helped Syracuse to a surprising, I don't want to say upset, but a surprising win over Florida State. That was a fun one. You got time for another one? I give you one more because
please.
I can't say I have a million and only give you one. Right?
Yeah, no, give me another one, please, Mike.
Another favorite story of mine, and this is a little shorter. Again, we were talking about how he was the unheralded recruit in the class, sort of like a football, basketball guy in high school, and guys like Lukey Jackson, Anthony Harris, Glenn Secunda, all rated higher than him in his own freshman class. And Wayne Morgan, the Syracuse assistant, had been the guy that recruited him. And Wayne, in the first few practices that fall, Lawrence's freshman year, notices Lawrence is kind of quiet. And after a few practices, Wayne goes up to Lawrence and says, "Hey, you okay?" And Lawrence, in his really kind of high-pitched but soft voice, says, "Don't tell nobody nothing, but I'm better than all these guys." It's like, he knew. It's like this quiet guy, who just smooth on the court and everything, had a supreme level of confidence in himself even then.
Oh, my goodness.
It's not at all what you would think was going to come out of his mouth. Don't tell nobody nothing, but I'm better than all these guys. That's my best Lawrence Moten imitation. And I'm really, really bad at imitations. But God bless Lawrence Moten. I loved him. I love that voice. He was a great guy. I covered him in the early years of taking over the beat. I was young. I was in my 20s. So I wasn't too much older, than Lawrence when he got there. And then, of course, the fact that he returned to the Syracuse area, Wes, and was around, and he was out in the community, and it was always at games, and he's less than 10 years older, younger than me, and so we got to know him a little better, and you really just really appreciated that guy. He was a really sweet, gentle soul, and he's going to be missed by everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Mike. And I remember he came on the podcast, and the reason why I knew the story about him and his mom is because he told it on the podcast, and he was so gracious with his time. And yeah. I feel like everyone who approached him that was a fan or
he made you feel that way.
Exactly.
Lawrence, if you went up and introduced yourself to Lawrence, he would talk to you. He would take a picture with your kid.
Yes.
He would take the time, and everybody would leave feeling like, he's a good guy. And he took a minute to get to know me a little bit. And that's that's just a incredible trait for somebody of his stature and magnitude at Syracuse, that he would just glide amongst the crowd at the Dome, or if you met him on the street, man, Lawrence was ready to be your friend. He was a good guy, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be tough to say goodbye to him later this week at the funeral down in Maryland.
Well, Mike, we certainly always appreciate you coming on. Thanks for a couple of those stories. Again, our great friend from Syracuse.com, Mike Waters. Mike, we appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the start of the college basketball season. Again, thanks for taking a couple of minutes with us to talk about Lawrence, because that really is very meaningful to hear some of those stories. And we'll definitely catch up with you soon.
Sure thing, Wes. This was a lot of fun. Always good to see and talk to you again.
Same here. All right. Thanks, Mike.